Hello all, welcome to the web application pen testing course on Pentester Academy. In this video, we will look at session IDs. So what is a session ID? Very simply put, it is supposed to be a unique identifier or token which is used by the web application to go ahead and again uniquely identify a user session. Now, it is important to note here that both authenticated as well as unauthenticated users may be provided session IDs. Really, to be frank, it just depends on the application logic and what the developer has done. More on session ID is available in Wikipedia if you're interested in a much more formal definition. So, where is a session ID stored? Right? Again, multiple possibilities. It can be stored in the URL. It can be stored as a form field, typically hidden form fields. It can be part of your cookie, or there could be other interesting ways to put it in as well. Now, what would be your ideal session ID? Now, typically, session ID, given it is supposed to be unique to a given user, for a given session he's having with the web application, it is something which should not be easily duplicable. And that is why an ideal session ID would have to be really long. This ensures that nobody can crack it with brute force attacks and things like that. It should be random. You can have something long, but what if someone can guess the sequence in which you're creating it, right? So it should not follow any simple mathematical sequence. It should be really as random as possible. Third, the name should not suggest the functionality, right? So for example, a session ID which says, authenticated user equals whatever is the session ID, or tracking, underscore user equals whatever is the long session ID which you've given. Ideally, you should not make the name suggest the functionality, because this gives potential pen testers and hackers really good clues into which one of these session IDs is of importance to them, right? Fourth, session IDs should automatically time out and typically should never be recycled, which is reused, right? Because imagine if the application never times out a session ID, then that session ID from the client's browser can be stolen by an attacker if he breaks into the machine, or maybe is viewed in transit if there is no SSL and everything goes in as plain text. There are so many other possibilities. So ideally, time out your session IDs and try never to recycle them and reuse them. Fifth, you should not try to derive your session ID from shared secrets like passwords or usernames or anything which an attacker can easily guess, right? Or on the other end, if the session ID is compromised, an attacker should not be able to derive things like password, usernames, or any shared secret, right? This actually is really an extension of the second one, which is make it random, right? Do not derive it from known values, which could go ahead and make it predictable, right? Finally, depending on the application, let's say you have an banking application, something which is of critical importance, ensure that the session ID, however you send it, in the form of a cookie, part of a form, or whatever you may choose, it should be sent over a secure channel, which in the web world means HTTPS. Now, if you look at all the different problems which can arise in session IDs, it is really if a developer ends up skipping any of these rules. So if it is not long enough, an attacker could just brute force it. If it is not random but follows a sequence, an attacker can do session ID analysis and figure out the sequence. If the name suggests the functionality, then you've made the attacker's job very, very simple, so that he can now focus only on that specific session ID and discard any other cookies or anything else which you may have put in. If it doesn't time out, doesn't recycle, then again, this is prone to attacks in the future. And if you use known quantities to derive it, if the attacker manages to get his hands on a session ID, he could reverse the process and derive things like passwords from it. And finally, without a secure channel, in today's world when people access web applications in coffee shops, hotspots, over their mobile phones, again over insecure Wi-Fi, you're pretty much going to lose the keys to the kingdom, right? Now, I've put out a bunch of session ID challenges. So if you look at the web application challenges section, challenge 9, 10 and 11 should have session ID challenges. Now, you know me, I never like to close a video without any form of practical demo in it. So let's do a quick demo to look at, how session IDs and, cookies and all of that interplaying together could become very complicated from an analysis perspective. So I opened up Iceweasel. I'm going to go ahead and set my proxy settings again to localhost 8080 so that I can run burp. I'm going into privacy and I'm going to ensure I clear my recent history. This is so that we can start on a clean slate. And then I'm going to start burp. So really all I'm trying to show you is in a commercial web application, you could have multiple session IDs, or even honestly IDs you don't even know what it's being used for. Right? So that's how complicated real world apps can get. And if you go ahead and violate any of those golden rules which we spoke about, or rather a developer violates, then it just makes the attacker's life easy, right? So, okay, let's go in here. Let's say, go to yahoo.com. Burp is waiting for us. So right now, if you notice, there is no cookie, nothing being sent. Let me forward this request. In response, Yahoo seems to be going ahead and setting up really long cookie values, right? FPC equals D equals something really, really long, right? This could be a session ID for an unauthenticated user. As I said, a lot of this stuff also depends on how the developer is using it. So we can only guess at this time based on this very simple initial analysis. So forwarded that. And now, look at this. You have so many of these little things being set here. FPC, you have FPT, FPC underscore S, and just look at the size of these, right? Really, really long and seems to be quite unpredictable, right? And if you notice, even the names are not very predictable. I mean, you could probably go and see what the page is doing and try and guess what the names mean, but at first glance, FPT, FPC doesn't seem to be too predictable, right? Fantastic. So I think once you get into the challenges, you will get a taste of what can happen if you go ahead, or if rather the developer goes ahead and creates session IDs in an insecure way. So that's all for this video. If you like Pentester Academy, I would really appreciate and be thankful if you can recommend us to your friends and colleagues in the information security community. We are really trying to reinvent and revolutionize and honestly disrupt this space by providing ongoing training at the most affordable price in the industry. And we really need all the help we can get from you guys. Also, please do connect with us on Twitter and Facebook. I always love hearing from you. That's all for this video. Thank you.